Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. I'm Dean Jones, your host. This is Season 7, Episode 3, and today I'm talking to the wonderful Sophie Minchilli, and she is the author of the new book, The Sweetness of Doing Nothing. It's a wonderful book that talks about living in Italy and their way of life, and about the food, about how people live their days. It's studded with just gorgeous, lush photographs and really beautiful, curated recipes that Sophie has created. I love talking with Sophie. She was a really fun person to talk to, and I really think you're going to enjoy this conversation. So, without further ado, we're going to my conversation with Sophie Minchilli, the author of The Sweetness of Doing Nothing. Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. I'm your host, Dean Jones. And today we're speaking with author Sophie Minchilli. Sophie, thank you for being on the program.
And thank you so much for having me.
So your book, The Sweetness of Doing Nothing, has come out. How do you feel about this? Are you excited about your book coming out?
I am very excited. This is my first book. So it's my first baby. And it was supposed to come out in 2020, actually, but then a pandemic happened.
Yes.
And so finally it's out.
Yeah, it's been affecting everybody. I've been talking to so many authors who've had that affect them as well.
Yeah.
Now, your bio describes yourself as half American, half Italian. Where in the United States did you live?
I've actually never lived in the United States.
Okay.
So my mom is American. My dad's Italian. He's from the south of Italy. And I was born and raised in Rome, Italy. So I've never actually lived in the States. I visit a lot, but never lived there.
All right. Now, you spent some time in London going to university. What did you study there, and which college did you go to?
So I went to London for 3 years, and I went to LCC, which is London College of Communications, and I studied communications.
Nice.
And at the time, I thought it was sort of a general thing. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life, and that sort of helped me figure it out.
What did you like best about England while you lived there?
I guess the fact, first of all, that I had never lived outside of Italy. So it was exciting to see a new culture, a new city. And I never really got used to the weather, actually, but I love just the fact that it was very international. Any kind of food you wanted, you could find it. There was people from all over the world, just anything you can imagine, really.
Now you lead tours through Italy, and I was very interested in this because you lead a couple of types of tours. You have week-long tours and day tours. So tell me what these are like for you when you do them for your guests that you have on these tours.
So I'm based in Rome, and that's where I lead most of my tours. And those are day tours. So they're about 3 hours long. And I take people basically to all the neighborhoods I grew up going to. And I show them the places I grew up going to. So like my favorite market, the bakery, the butcher, and we just talk about the culture of food in Rome and the way Romans eat and shop for food. And then I also work with my mother, Elizabeth, and together we lead week-long tours all over Italy. So we do them in Sicily, in Puglia, in Umbria, and other places. And those are lots of fun. It's a whole week of eating, drinking, exploring, talking about life in Italy. It's great.
I love when you say things in your native Italian. And I think about how much I try and do some language programs. And I think when I try and do any Italian, I always sound like Bugs Bunny in the Warner Brothers cartoons, and he go, arrivederci. I just sound awful. Now,
funny.
Do you think that any of the because in your book you talk about a kind of there's a method in your book that you talk about, the dolce far niente, if I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Yeah.
And unless I sound like Bugs Bunny again, and it's a kind of a way of life. You kind of slow down, relax, take time, take life, in a bit at a time. And I think a lot of people make the mistake of when they're tourists, they're like, I have a checklist. I need to make all these photographs for my Instagram account. And they have an agenda. And it seems like, are you kind of saying, hey, hold on, experience it?
Yeah, dolce far niente literally translates to the sweetness of doing nothing. And I think in general, our approach to life has changed completely in today's world. Like most of us, we've made way too much space for things we don't actually need. And we often think that keeping busy is a way to feel important and purposeful. And I feel like Italians have figured out a long time ago, and they still live that way today, that being constantly busy and checking things off that to-do list actually lead to extreme anxiety, and that makes you a lot less productive. And so in general, yeah, I tell people on my tours, when you come to Italy, don't say like, oh, I'm gonna do Rome, I'm gonna do Florence, I'm gonna do the Colosseum, the Vatican. Just like take it slow. Enjoy your travels to Italy just like you would want to enjoy your life.
Now, what about, and this is something that makes me laugh because I can just imagine it, knowing Americans in general, because I am one, I can imagine they come to Italy and go, where's the Parmesan cheese that I could sprinkle all over everything? And they want the red sauce. What was this? There was an episode of The Sopranos when some Italians went to there and they're like, where's the meat gravy? And like I was like, what are you talking about? Like do you have some, do you see that with tourists a lot?
Yeah, it's funny because Italian food is actually a lot more simple than people think. So like, for example, the pizza I grew up only has tomato sauce on it. It doesn't even have cheese. It's just literally pizza and fresh tomato sauce and olive oil. And people are so surprised. They're like, where's all the garlic? Where's all the cheese? And I'm like, Italians barely use any garlic. If they use it, they put a whole piece in the sauce and then take it out before eating. We really don't use garlic. It's funny, the grated cheese made me think. Last week, I was leading a week-long tour in Puglia, and a woman on the tour ordered a special pasta that they only make in this restaurant. And it's basically like a spicy tomato sauce. And then she looked to the waiter and asked for some cheese to put on her pasta. And the waiter was in complete shock. And he looked at me and then he looked at her and he was like, no, sorry, I can't bring that to you. And he turned around and left. So Italian waiters will actually like tell you how to eat your food.
Now, what about coffee? Because like Americans will walk around with what essentially is a huge, gigantic canteen of coffee all day long, sipping it and drinking enormous amounts of coffee. Now, Italian life is very different with coffee, and there's kind of rules about it, right?
There's rules and there's a way of drinking it. So takeaway coffee is definitely not a thing here. If you try and ask for takeaway coffee, the people at the coffee bar will be very confused. And they'll put them in like those little plastic cups you get at the dentist, which will burn your fingers off. And then they'll cover it with tin foil and put it on a tray for you to take away. So Italians will either sit down at a table if you're with people or you want to read a book, but usually it's quickly at the bar standing up. And it's also a social thing. So you're chatting with the people around you or the person making coffee. And really the most common coffee drinks are either an espresso, which is like a quick shot, or a cappuccino, which has milk with the espresso. But we don't have big coffee drinks. I remember when I would go to the States as a kid, I would be very confused and ask my mom why everyone was walking around with like flower vases filled with coffee.
Yep.
They just seemed huge to me.
Yeah. And like I feel like too, we have, I think, too much fast food and everything, and eating in your car and eating on the go constantly, like never actually stopping. And it seems like Italian is the opposite. It's like, stay where you are, enjoy yourself, not continually like trying to do 5 things at once. Is that correct?
Yeah, Italians definitely, especially when it comes to food, they like to like slow down, sit down. Either if you're on your own, you still sit down, but it's better if you're with someone, you actually have a conversation. But like, I don't know anyone who would eat their lunch in front of a computer screen in their office. They actually leave the office for an hour and go sit down at a restaurant and have a proper meal. There is street food, of course, but it's always people like standing or sitting somewhere and eating it outside. But it's never like walking and eating or in your car. That doesn't exist here.
Good. And I hope that never changes. I hope you guys retain
Stay
that.
strong.
Please do. Say no to the fast food joints. Now, what would you say? I know this is, I don't want to say this is a generalization, but just for the sake of the book and what you're talking about, what is the average day like for an Italian in Rome?
I would say, depending on your job, obviously, but waking up around like 7:30, having breakfast, and then people usually have a second breakfast at their favorite coffee bar. And that's usually a place you've been going to for a very long time. I've been
Right.
going to the same coffee bar for almost 30 years now.
That's kind of nice. I
And
like that.
yeah, they're like family. They know
Yeah.
everything about my life.
I would like that myself. That'd be good.
Yeah, and that's with most Italians. And if your favorite coffee bar closes, that's like the end of the world. But then you would go to work and then lunch break. So when I was a kid, most people would go home for lunch. So you would close your shop or leave your office and go home for lunch. For me, school would finish around 1 or 2 some days, and then we would go home for lunch, and that was the end of the day. So I remember I would go home and my whole family would be there and we would eat lunch together. And then usually would go back to work after your lunch and nap. And then you meet up with friends for an aperitivo, which is what we have before dinner. We meet up with either friends or family for a drink and a little snack. And then dinner is usually around like 9 p.m. And bedtime is a little later, I think, than in the States because we go to bed around like midnight.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, starts all over again. Sundays are day to relax, though. Sundays when we have like a huge long meal and we eat a lot more than we would usually, and then take a long walk in the afternoon, have gelato, have aperitivo, and go out for pizza. Sunday night is pizza.
I'm moving to Italy. Are you taking people? My wife and I will be there next week. We're gonna go live in Italy now. It sounds like paradise. I don't know. This just sounds great. I don't know why we've decided to go the opposite direction in America, make everything like a hamster wheel. It's crazy.
I know, I'm pretty lucky to live here.
What now? Italy gets used in TV shows and films a lot. And so somebody who lives there, do you ever cringe at some of like the stereotypes or things that you see in films where they get it wrong? What do they get wrong in films and what do they get right?
I guess for me, because of my job and the food tours I lead, it's always the food. So these big, huge portions of pasta filled with like cheeses and garlic and Italian dressings. Who's ever heard of that in Italy? Um,
It's
chicken
it
on
sounds
things.
weird.
Yeah, there's none of that here. But I guess also like the stereotypical like mafia, that kind of person that doesn't
Yeah.
really exist here.
This episode is sponsored by Culinary Historians of Northern California, a Bay Area educational group dedicated to the study of food, drink, and culture in human history. To learn more about this organization and their work, please visit their website at www.chnorcal.org. Now, you had some really great recipes in your book. So I want to talk about the book a little bit because it's a gorgeous book, and I really want to urge people to get it because the message that you have about dolce far niente, it's just really beautiful, and it's like a it's almost kind of like it's written in a way kind of like a beautiful poem the way it unfolds, and with the different photographs in there that are so gorgeous, and then your really lovely recipes and everything kind of interspersed through it. It really has a beautiful layout. Did you get a chance to kind of how much hand did they give you? Because I know I feel like publishers are giving more leeway to writers to kind of have more control. Were you given more control as far as that goes with your book?
So I don't really know how it works usually, but I feel like I was very lucky because the publisher came to me with an idea, like a concept, so the name of the book, and then they were like, we trust you to do whatever you want with it. So I had complete freedom with the book, and the pictures are 98% mine, so it's all my photographs that I took, so that was amazing. And yeah, there's some recipes in there, I think I included a couple of my favorite pastas from Rome, which is
Mm-hmm.
carbonara and amatriciana.
Mm.
And yeah, while I was living in London, those were the two pastas I was missing the most. My mom would send me care packages with all the ingredients I needed to make them for me and my roommates. And then I included a few like seasonal recipes, because I also talk about how we still very much eat with the seasons here in Italy. And so like we wait all year long for those August tomatoes or the fresh peas in the spring. And there's a recipe my grandma taught me as well, orecchiette con le cime di rapa, which is pasta with broccoli rabe.
Oh yeah, that sounds great.
Oh my God, it's so good.
Well, you have some great recipes on your website, and then also in the cookbook is like, I mean, in the book, as I said, are you considering in the future maybe a full cookbook one day, or because you do really great food writing?
Thank you. I'm not considering. I mean, I'm thinking about another book, but I don't know if it's going to be a full cookbook, because I also like telling stories and,
Yeah.
talking about culture that surrounds the recipes. So not just recipes, but maybe a mix of things.
Now, did you have a hard time selecting which recipes you wanted to put in the book? Because I know that's usually kind of a hardship for the authors to kind of like narrow it down.
Yeah, a little, but I didn't have that much space. So I chose my very favorite. So that was sort of easy. I mean, my obsession is pasta and vegetables. So it's a mix of pasta and vegetable dishes. And I mean, there's thousands recipes I could be talking about, but I didn't have much room. So that made it easier.
Do you have any food writers that you like to read that you really enjoy, or any kind of media food celebrities that you like to watch or kind of enjoy?
Um, First person that came to mind actually is one of my mom's best friends that I grew up with. Her name is Evan Kleiman, and she has an amazing food podcast, and she has a lot of cookbooks, and she used to have an Italian restaurant in LA in the 90s called Angeli, and she taught me a lot about food, and her cookbooks are great, and her name is Evan Kleiman. But I feel like nowadays on Instagram and TikTok, I'm trying to use TikTok, I'm always finding new people, and it's fun to watch recipes now in this sort of quick video form. I'm learning a lot. But on the other hand, I'm also terrible at following recipes. I'm very good at improvising. So if you give me a bunch of ingredients, I can make something amazing, but I can't follow a recipe.
You are such a good photographer. And I really, really like your Instagram page because you got such good photographs of people. You really get a sense of like the people on the streets, the people around Italy. It's just really great. Have you been thought about maybe doing a book on your photographs, or maybe even doing an exhibit or something like that? Because your stuff is really good.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually thought about doing a book with my photographs, because I photograph people mostly. And I actually photograph older people. So like my grandma's generation. And I love hearing their stories. So under the caption underneath a lot of my pictures is actually
Yes.
the story these people are telling me. So I feel like it would be incredible to have sort of a book where all these stories are put together, as to not forget them.
Did you always want to be kind of a storyteller and work with food? Do you think you kind of had that all your life and it kind of just came together as an adult?
I get it was also thanks to my mom. So I really didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I knew I liked Italy and I knew I liked food. And when my mom told me she had started doing food tours, I actually thought she had gone completely crazy, because what is a food tour? At the time, it was something completely new. Nobody was doing it. And she sort of forced me to do the first tour. I didn't want to do it. And once I did it, I was just mind blown. Like, this is the job for me. I was meant to do this. There's nothing else I can imagine myself doing.
Now, I want to ask you, as somebody who likes to cook, what is a meal that you're likely to make when you're for yourself when you're home alone and just kind of trying to relax in the evening?
Pasta for sure. I eat pasta every day. So I also love vegetables, like I said before. So maybe the easiest, quickest thing I do is I boil the pasta and the vegetables in the same pot.
Yeah.
So that makes it quick. And then I drain it and add it to a pan with some olive oil, garlic, and anchovies, maybe. And then just mix it all around, and dinner's ready in 10 minutes.
That sounds wonderful. Now, I mean, I always ask everybody because I love this question, but it's kind of a hard one. If you had to plan a last meal for yourself, and it could be either you could cook it for yourself, have somebody cook it for you, or at a restaurant, what would you have for your last meal? As extravagant as you want.
Oh my God, so many things I would want. I guess, so I'm gonna split it in starter, first course, second course, and dessert. So my starter would be bread, saltless bread, actually. That's a thing here in Italy, and I love it. And
Yes.
saltless because I would be eating it with salami and mozzarella di bufala, so buffalo milk mozzarella, which are both quite salty, so they go well with the bread. Then first course would be amatriciana, which is one of the pastas I talk about in the book. And I remember when I came back from college from London to Italy, I ate that every single day for months because I missed it so much. And then my second course would probably be, there's a dish called here in Rome, saltimbocca alla romana, which means jump in your mouth, Roman style. And it's a thin veal cutlet with prosciutto and sage on top of it, cooked in white wine. It's so good.
That sounds great. That sounds amazing.
And then desserts, there's another cake that's another thing that's typical from Rome is a cake stuffed with ricotta and sour cherry jam. So
that sounds amazing. That sounds very good.
Yeah, that's my meal.
You've been able to, you travel a bit. So when you've had foods from other cultures outside of Italy, what's been some of your favorite foods that you've had outside of Italy and or different cultures? Like, for instance, have you had a chance to try much Mexican food?
So I was just going to say my last trip, and it was actually my first trip in 2 years, was in Mexico. And it was the first time in my life that I was in a place and I thought, wow, this food is just as good as Italian food, if not better. My mind was blown away by Mexican food, just incredible, so good.
Yeah, it's funny that I think we misinterpret Mexican food and Italian food equally in America. We tend to like dumb it down, and like we have this place called Olive Garden in America, which is a chain restaurant, and it's a bit of a nightmare. Don't ever go there. It'll make you cry.
Once a friend of mine from the States told me about Olive Garden, so I looked at the menu online just like for fun. I was just like in tears, laughing, crying. I don't know. I was in shock.
It's horrible. And we do the same thing with Mexican food. I think we just dump cheese on it. I think that's an American thing. Like we're like, look, food from another culture. We're going to cover it with cheese. It's like, I don't know if the dairy board in America has control of everything. I don't know. But...
Yeah, there's a lot of cheese on everything.
Yeah. Oh, Sophie, I want to really thank you for being on the podcast. I've enjoyed getting to talk to you, and I hope to have you on again someday. And I really want to have everybody go out and get a copy of her book. You're going to really love it. It'll make you smile. It'll make you happy, and it'll make you want to drink Campari like I've been doing lately. The Sweetness of Doing Nothing. Sophie, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
That was my conversation with Sophie Minchilli. Her book, The Sweetness of Doing Nothing, is out now. You can buy it from most retailers and online with most distributors. I wanted to really say I had a great time talking to Sophie, and she makes me really want to go to Italy. And just to mention it, we're going to put links to her website on the bio, and that has information on her tours, as well as many recipes that she's written and information about her book. Check that out in the bio. We want to mention that we are supported by CH NorCal, who is a wonderful organization that supports culinary historians around the Bay Area. We have a link in the bio, and check that out. We also want to say you can buy me a coffee or a pint by going to the link in the bio and even leaving feedback there. We also want to give a really hearty thanks to Asian Man Records for letting us use the song Talk About Love in our intro and outro. They're a wonderful label, and they sponsor many bands, and you could check out all those bands and buy vinyl from them, t-shirts, or bumper stickers at asianmanrecords.com. We also ask our listeners, if you like the program, please share it with a friend or on social media. That being said, I hope you all have a really great day, and see us again on Friday with our next guest. Have a pleasant week, and keep on cooking.
I've been getting better, better than you'll know. Take a little time for it to show. You make my life seem settled, settling for more. Take a little time for love to grow. Will you break my heart with so much pleasure? Will you talk